It's the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast, your source for anything and everything indie horror. Here's your host, Otis B. Dreads. It's Wednesday. It's 8 p.m. Do you know where your indie horror is? It's right here, the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast. I am Otis B. Dreads, and of course, sitting shotgun rotting Ricky D. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, my friend. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. This is going to be a fun talk. I got a feeling a lot of vampires, a lot of talk about vampires are going to be mentioned tonight. We have Ted Nicolaou. I did pronounce that right?
I believe so. Yeah, we'll find out in a minute.
Okay, no, I know. I see him back there in the green room. He's shaking his head. Yes, I was a
All
little
right.
worried about that. Okay, yes, you probably know him most well known for the '80s cult classic TerrorVision, the Subspecies, and the latest one, which we're going to show the trailer on before we get to him. But before we get to all that, please observe all of the links down scrolling below the indiehorrorjunkie.com, where you can get issue number 4 coming out in just
A week from today.
just a week from today. Yeah, I was going to say good evening, Joe. Joe originally has joined us in the chat. Yes, issue number 4. A lot of good stuff going to be in there. And of course, we have some Facebook pages, a new one. Actually, since last week, since we talked, the Indie Horror Junkie group, a group, and we have the page, and we also have the Indie Horror Junkie Podcast page, which you see down there at the bottom. And hey, Indie Horror Junkie, the magazine, they offer a little bit of advertising, and we got some cool stuff. We're getting some merch over there at the site, so be sure to check out all of that over there at the indiehorrorjunkie.com. All the upcoming guests coming up, which we have some good ones. We'll make mention of that at the end of the broadcast. And also, the store. We got some merch happening. Got some good tumblers over there if you need something to put your beverage in and represent the Indie Horror Junkie. Because we're all junkies for indie horror. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
As you mentioned, in the description for the group, it's kind of an intervention. We're here to supply what you're fiending for.
Absolutely. The group is basically put together so we can get people that are fans of the page, fans of the podcast, to get on there and chat with us, find out who they want to talk to, what they want to see, if they've got movies out there they know about that are being developed or in production or just being released that they want to hear some news about. They want to get on the show or get in the magazine. Jump in there, let us know so we can chat with you.
That's right. And if you got questions for Ted as we get into all of this, lots of people showing up. That's good.
Absolutely.
And that one says Facebook user. I'm not sure who that is. And of course, as I mentioned, Joe is here. So should we get right into this then? I think we kind of covered all the bases. One last thing. We have the Gmail down there if you need to contact the Indie Horror Junkie for any type of services, advertising, things like that. But please be patient. We're pretty busy over here on this side, so be patient. We'll get back with you if you do happen to send us an email inquiring. And we'd also love to hear some suggestions on people you would like to see here on the podcast. So that would also be kind of cool. Get some suggestions. So, but we have our guest tonight, Subspecies. We were talking before we went on, Rick. We're both fans of vampire movies, and Ted has delivered quite a few times. Writer, director, and I mean his list, his IMDb is just it goes on and on. I mean,
Absolutely.
So. Go
I got
ahead.
to know him a couple of years ago, basically on Facebook, and mainly I think through my friend Denise Duff, who was has been in most of the subspecies except for I think the first one. She was introduced in part two, and I got to know Denise, and I've had her at my festivals a couple times. She lives here in Florida, and we've chatted quite a few times. And through her, I got to meet Ted. And we had talked about Subspecies 5 years ago when he had written the script, sent the script to me and everything to review. And I was so excited for it because I became a huge Subspecies fan. The first one hooked me. The second one drove the nails in deeper, and I
Mhm.
watched every one of them since then. But it's been quite a few years, and then he kept telling me, "I'm coming back with this one, coming back with this one," and here it is.
Here it is. I'm missing. I haven't seen 3 or 4 yet.
Oh well.
Those are the ones that I haven't seen quite yet. Molly Zombie has joined us. Good evening, Molly. So I guess without further ado, I know most of the people in the chat listening has heard of this
Hmm.
Subspecies 5. So Blood Rise, Subspecies 5. Let's take a look. And when we come back from this trailer, we're gonna have Mr. Ted Nicolaou with us. Check it out.
Out of the dark ages, a child was born. Crusaders stole the cursed child. The creature grew to manhood. He was trained in the arts of war, sworn into a secret sect.
We have come for the Bloodstone.
What is your name, Crusader? Radu.
It is here.
Ladislas is your father.
Spare my child.
Don't listen to the lies of demons.
All that is his can be yours.
She spoke the truth, Marif.
She's a vampire.
She is becoming one.
You must never leave me, Radu. Unto eternity.
What's happened?
I'm defiant.
You are not our master.
You have so much to learn. Life or death. This choice is yours.
Nice.
And that is great. Ted, welcome to the Indie Junkie Horror Podcast, sir.
Hey, thanks so much, Otis.
That is
Rick.
that is not your granddaddy's vampire, I can tell you that.
Yeah, he looks like a granddaddy, but he still moves pretty fast. Yeah.
He's still very convincing. Love it.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rick had mentioned, as you heard sitting back there in the green room, this is an idea for 5 that's been out for quite some time.
Yeah, when we were kind of in the heyday of Full Moon Productions, and we did the first 4 of the movies, Charlie Band sort of asked me to write a 5th one, and I decided to make it a prequel and kind of tell the backstory of Radu. And this was probably 2000 or late 1990s. And then when Full Moon kind of underwent some problems, financial problems that took a long time to kind of straighten out, we kind of sat on the script, and Charlie wanted to do it and we wanted to do it, but we didn't want to do it unless the budget was right and we were able to kind of create something that we felt proud of. And that year finally came after COVID. We were going to do it before COVID, and then COVID kind of put another couple of years in between.
Sure. Um, let's go back a little bit to the beginning because I learned something about you, Ted, earlier that you had worked on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You were kind of doing some sound work with that. What exactly were you doing there?
Yeah, I was a location sound recordist. So basically, I was mixing the dialogue and sound effects as we were shooting the film. Straight out of film school, kind of went to work on that film.
That must have been a fun little set to be on.
Right.
It was kind of hellacious because it was summertime in Texas, out in the middle of fields and hotter than blazes, and long, 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 crazy days. But yeah, we had a good time.
That is the consensus that I've heard reading stories about the when that movie being made, it was absolutely atrocious. The heat, 102 in the shade, that kind of thing. Um, so after that, where did you go? Did you stay in the horror genre after Texas Chainsaw? I mean, how did you get to director? If you started out, I mean, I know you went to film school, which
Yeah.
you just gotten out of and then hit the set for Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, Chainsaw Massacre. Then I stayed in Austin for a few more years after that because we felt like maybe we could raise money to make another horror film there. And the tax breaks that were afforded to rich oil people kind of evaporated. And a lot of my good friends kind of had already moved out to Los Angeles, and they kept telling me I should come out there and come out here where I am now. And so in 77, I packed my Texas Chainsaw Massacre green van and came out to Los Angeles, like the Beverly Hillbillies, man, and loved it here and found work on a movie called Roar, a crazy movie with Tippi Hedren, and uh, that's like one of the most insane movies ever made. And edited that for 6 or 8 months, and then met Charlie Band and went to work on Tourist Trap for some friends of mine that I'd gone to film school with.
Tourist
And
Trap
then,
is a favorite of mine.
oh yeah,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I,
Definitely mine as well.
awesome.
So your directorial debut was which movie?
TerrorVision was the first feature. I did a little segment in Rage War, I think, or what's that movie called? Uh, yeah, I did one segment in a kind of a compilation movie that Charlie put together, testing directors, and then TerrorVision was really my first shot at actually taking the reins on a whole movie.
To me, that was the heyday of horror films. I mean, I'm a huge 80s fan. To me, you can't top 80s horror movies. You really
Yeah,
can't.
it was the days when independent studios like Full Moon were making movies before the studios kind of tuned into the fact that they could make the same films for like 100 times the budget, and they kind of took over and got to be in all the theaters, and we got kind of squeezed out to home video.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. What vampires. I'm a huge. I know you probably heard us talking. We're both huge vampire. Just the whole concept of a vampire. And as I mentioned, these are not your granddaddy's vampires. These are very different. You think that makes the subspecies stand out from other vampire movies? Because I don't know if you heard us talking. One of my favorites is 30 Days of Night. And those are very different vampires. Those are very quick. And as you mentioned, these vampires are, they have a little quickness to them. They do that little teleporting type thing, get right up in your face. Um, do you think that causes, subspecies to stand out amongst other vampire movies? The fact that you went that direction with it?
I think what really helped subspecies to stand out was the fact that the first four were shot in Transylvania, in Romania,
Yeah.
and so the kind of atmosphere of Eastern Europe and the castles and churches ruined monasteries that we were able to shoot in was like phenomenal. Added so much to the stories, and then the Romanian actors that kind of bring a kind of music to the language and incredible acting skill. And then I think Anas Hove, I got to give Anas Hove a ton of credit for creating that character Radu and bringing him to life with such kind of vivid intensity. And over the course of the movies, you know, we kind of evolved that character more and more, so that the first one, he's kind of this nameless monster, and by the third or fourth one, you really feel kind of for his dilemma as a vampire. For me, the whole idea of vampires and immortality and the weight of immortality and the knowledge and the loneliness, and in Subspecies 5, the search for some kind of family to belong to is kind of what drives that movie. So yeah, I have to say Anas Hove and the locations and the fact that we set out to make a movie with almost no money, and yet against all odds, you know, because of the place we were shooting and the talent of the cinematographer and the costume designer and all of that, everything came together magically for us.
It definitely, filming in that location, it definitely, you know, I mean, just adds 1,000-fold to the, you know, the atmosphere. You get sucked into the atmosphere along with the characters. And that really, I mean, you can't build a set like that with some of the stuff that I saw in that movie. You're not doing that in a studio, you know. That is something that really brings some, I guess, authenticity to it.
Yeah, and the amount of difficulty that you go through to actually shoot in these places is kind of offset by the richness that it gives the film. And Romania back in 1990, when we first shot the first film, was a really scary, very sinister feeling place, and so that kind of seeped into the movie as well.
No, absolutely. Any what was probably, you know, filming overseas? What were some of the complications that you had to deal with? I know there were some political things going on, I believe, at that time that maybe made it a little, you know, uneasy. But you know, what were some of the, as far as the actual filming? What kind of complications did you run in over there versus, you know, over here?
I think the first film we were shooting, you know, like 8 months after the revolution that toppled Ceausescu, and the crews and the people and the waiters in restaurants, nobody had ever had to actually work and kind of serve people for a living. You know, they had a job, they hated their job, they hated their life, they got drunk, they smoked cigarettes, and fuck you if you want your water in your restaurant right away.
Yeah.
And the crew kind of had that same attitude in a lot of instances, very Eastern European, former communist way of making movies. There was no rush because nobody was going anywhere. So our big challenge, besides the language, was basically kind of teaching people or kind of urging people to kind of work hard and work every day. We had a certain amount of film to shoot, and sometimes the film stock didn't arrive on time, and we had to kind of shoot very economically. Wine was $1 a bottle, and so the actors were getting drunk on set, and that was a real problem.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was, for me, it was like one of the most difficult shoots ever. And yet when it was over and I came home, I was like, wow, that was really beautiful in a way too, because all the misery that you experience on the set and with the problems of the society kind of pushing against you, were offset by drinking a bottle of wine with your friends at night and with the crew and laughing, you know. And back then, that was all they had, was laughter. And the actors had an amazing life, because the theaters were very active, and there was a rich tradition of actors and getting drunk after theater in these really cool little bars.
That's great. Yeah,
So
I mean, you have to wait till after you're done. I mean, at least you can't be drinking on set. I mean,
That
that
was
that can
that was
cause
a
some issues.
that was the deal I made with Honest after the first one, where we had to stop shooting on a few days, like the sword fight days, because he and Michael Watson were too drunk to work. And the Romanian stuntman was saying, "No, no, no, it's okay. It's good to be a little drunk for a sword fight." And we had to just pull the plug on those things. And I finally told Honest on Subspecies 2, let's make a deal. No drinking while we're shooting, and then I will come to you when they're taking the makeup off in the at the end of the day, and we'll have a bottle of wine together. And that's what we did, and it worked out for us, and we became great friends after that.
That's awesome. Ricky, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, a couple things. First off,
Yeah.
with regards to Honest, and you talked about the character and what he did with Radu. As a director myself, whatever it is, and you wrote a lot of this as well. How much of that was him in that character, or how much of that was you getting him to be the character that you envisioned, or did he pretty much just grab a hold of that thing and create Radu, and you just pretty much just held the reins?
No, it was a really great collaboration. He is a spectacular actor and respects kind of the director's input. And the first day, I mean, basically he was cast after I was already in Romania doing pre-production. So I never met him in the casting sessions. And when he showed up on set, it was the first time we met. And really the very first day that we did a makeup test for him, we were up in the mountains in Poiana Brașov, where the kind of castle that he roams around in Subspecies 1. And I said, let's go off by ourselves and just kind of talk about how this man moves and how he sounds. Because in my mind, I had an idea that I wanted him to sound like his lungs were dried out. And so
he definitely has that sound.
Yeah, he didn't have a voice. He had just a dry husk of wind coming out of his mouth. And then I sort of wanted his walk to be a little kind of crooked. And so we just went up by the castle and wandered around and talked about it and played with different voices and kind of found that voice. And then, the makeup does so much. The costume by Wana Tofan at the time, now Wana Paunescu, was so perfect for him. And the fingers kind of gave him so much to do with his hands that it kind of came together in that one session of about an hour where we just talked about it and kind of found what the character was. And then he evolved, of course, over time. And once you bring in the other actors into the equation and they're working together, he became kind of the masterful vampire that he eventually was in those movies.
I see a lot of Nosferatu.
Yeah, I love that movie.
As an influence. Yeah.
Yeah, that to me is what a vampire should be. Growing up, I was not a Dracula kid. I really liked Frankenstein and flying saucer movies. And Dracula to me seemed like a really boring kind of a monster. So the idea, and it wasn't until I was like in Austin at film school, I saw Nosferatu and Vampire, Carl Theodor Dreyer's Vampire, and kind of came to really love that sort of vampire straight out of the grave. And so, yeah, there's a lot of influence. That and the shadow movements and all of that kind of came from that.
Yeah, and I can understand where you're coming from, because I mean, a vampire is supposed to be living undead, I guess. I mean, he's gonna live forever. And Bella, his portrayal, Christopher Lee, I thought had a great portrayal in the old Hammer films. But these vampires, they reminded me a lot the way they looked, the way they moved, acted, a lot of the 30 Days of Night vampires. They kind of had that same similar, not exactly, but you know, that you could draw a similarity there.
Yeah, I mean, the first films, the first four, were shot on film, and so it wasn't as easy to do kind of motion effects and speed things up in the way that it is now. And when I was editing Subspecies 5, and I was kind of like, wow, that's kind of boring and slow when you kind of go in to bite somebody's neck. So I started playing with motion effects and kind of found a formula that I thought really made them more savage, and kind of went for that. So you can see kind of the improvement of technique from film to film, and the way that the shadow movements from number 1 to number 2 really improved in number 2 and 3. And then I think you also see like a improvement in Radu's character, and at least the emotional depth of that character. So we're always learning, and trying to improve.
Oh, sure, absolutely. What just now I got a kind of a general question. You may have already answered it. Filming out in Transylvania. Does that project, or is there another project that stands out in your career over any other project?
I've done so many movies in different countries, and
Right.
TerrorVision was shot in Italy, but it didn't really take advantage of Italy. It was shot mostly on a soundstage, a little bit of location work. For me, I think the Subspecies films are the ones where the location scouts were as fun as actually making a movie, because to get to travel across a country like that, up into Transylvania and into the mountains, and go into incredible, beautiful old Orthodox churches and monasteries and castles, and just get to play in those places. To me, that was that's the greatest location experience. The other one would be Dragon World, that kids movie that I did that was shot in the UK. Same sort of thing, incredible location work, and a lot of spectacular castles and moors and things like that. But I think the Subspecies films take the cake.
That's what I figured. I actually wrote that question down before I realized that it was filmed over there. So I'm like, I'm just going to ask it anyway. It's a filler at this point. You had made a comment on some other interviews that no real monsters scare you, people scare you. You have made that statement, which I believe is very true. The monsters aren't under our bed. We're looking at them every day. That made me wonder, do you get into true crime maybe when you're not filming? Is that something because there's some scary people there? I just have to know. I'm a true crime guy, and that makes things very scary for me.
You know what? I think that comment was basically that in a way, I don't like movies about cruelty, man's cruelty to man and women. To me, maybe I'm an empathetic person or something, and that it makes me really uncomfortable. Monsters, right. I'm perfectly happy to have a vampire, savage, anybody, man, woman, right. child, anything. There's some kind of step away from reality that works for me for cinema. That said, I do like true crime, and I do listen to podcasts. Right now, I'm kind of like stuck on Histories of Hollywood podcasts, and there are so many incredible ones that that's all I have time for the last year or two. But yeah, I fear people way more, because that's reality, man. I like fantasy more,
Absolutely. I got a couple quick questions for you.
Sure.
Obviously, this is the Indie Horror Junkie, so we're all about independent horror films and not studio films. I like calling it the working class filmmakers, the guys that are working 9 to 5 and then filming at night on the weekends, because that's just our passion. It's not for the money. It's because that's what we love to do. With that said, what do you think makes, or what do you think drives independent horror filmmakers the most? What for the fans of independent horror? What do you think that? In other words, why do independent horror films have such a following and such a rabid fan base? You think, as opposed to the studio films or whatever? So like, it just seems like I get these questions all the time. Why do people really love independent horror films as opposed to studio films? In your opinion?
I think independent horror films probably are the result of the vision of one person, primarily a writer or a director, whereas studio films are writer, director, studio executive, story people,
Right.
change it, bring in more writers, add a bunch of bullshit, and try to make as much money as you can. Whereas I think horror filmmakers, people who love horror films, are trying to make a movie that moves them.
It speaks to them. Yeah.
And
Right.
also terrifies people. And it's hard to terrify people with stories, but there's nothing more satisfying than creating an atmosphere that kind of wraps around a story and kind of reaches out and brings your audience into the story too.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the what's going on right now with the strike and the Writers Guild strike and this, what are your thoughts on that? As far as what's happening there, do you see an end to it anytime soon? And how does it affect, like, yourself right now with what you're doing?
Oh man, I hope the strike gets settled. I mean, for me, greed is kind of the thing that's killing our country. In fact, killing
Right.
products that we buy, entertainment that we consume, and the greed of studios and streamers is really horrifying. And everybody deserves to get paid kind of what they're worth, to do the work that they do. So I don't really see the studios kind of giving up their grip on money anytime soon. And the only thing that's hurting is everybody, the actors, the caterers, the technicians, the audience, the streamers eventually. I hope it hurts them, and hurting theater owners. Nobody's going to come out of this any better than they were. It's going to be a long time to be sorted out. For me, I'm kind of working on ideas and writing stuff for myself, and I just hope it ends one of these days and I can go back to work too.
Absolutely. I mean, it's hurting even the indie circuit, because with the streaming services, I mean, there's no solid distribution out there that anybody's comfortable with anymore. Everybody's looking for trying to get that minimum guarantee now, because they feel that might be the only money they get, is that money up front, because once it goes out there, there's no chance on ever seeing any money in any residuals or anything like that after the fact, because of the way that there is just no real good reporting and stuff. So it's affecting all of us as well. So it's just a scary situation.
How do you get your films out there?
Well, right now we just finished The Clock. The Clock is the first feature that I've done since I started this process. So I'm really kind of getting my dipping my toes into the water now. But I've been talking with a lot of people and finding out that all these distributors they're offering you either no money up front, they're not going to give you any kind of minimum guarantees. They're trying to do it on a, let's put it out there and let's have a percentage and stuff like that, and take care of you on the back end. But the bottom line is I'm part of a bunch of different groups. And that's one of the nice things about technology, is you've got Facebook and you've got Facebook groups, and you're able to communicate with a lot of people in the business that are making films now. And all of them are the horror stories they're saying about not being able to get any kind of payments, not being able to get any kind of paperwork, not being able to get any kind of statements as to what's happening and where their film's being seen. And when they do, they're getting information like, well, yes, it made this much money here, this much money there, but we put this much money into advertising and this and that. So it basically, bottoms out and washes out. So, I mean, and that's happening across the board.
Yeah. I mean, that's always been the case, that if you had net profits in a movie, good luck getting anything out of it. The only movie, I'll have to say, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, kind of got ripped off in its first release with Bryanston. But over the years, I own like 0.5% of the producer's portion of the net profits. And I still get money every year, a couple of times a year for that film. So
nice.
Congratulations to their lawyers and the honesty of Kim Henkel to keep that coming. But yeah, I mean, I'm trying to find out. I'd like to know how Subspecies 5 is doing. It's like on Screenbox and Full Moon, Amazon, and now Tubi.
Tubi.
And I guess money comes in and, a few cents here and a few cents there, and hopefully it will eventually earn its budget back.
Speaking of streaming, here's a question. Brenna says, "Don't you think the subscription issue from streaming is important? Actors has no piece of that, which is where the money is."
Yeah, I think that streamers know how many times a movie has been shown.
No doubt, no doubt.
And there should be a formula worked out where that you get some residuals. Everybody gets their residuals from the number of times the movie has streamed. And it should be easy to do that. But it's going to require a gigantic effort on the part of streamers and the studios and Actors Guild and the Writers Guild and Directors Guild to make sure that those are that's adhered to.
But that's the thing. I think you kind of mentioned it before. It's a greed thing. At the end of the day, the streamers are making all the money because they're collecting all that money from the movies being played, and they've got their processes in place to where they can basically hide the reporting and hide this and cover it up with all these different other payments to where they don't have to pay anything out to it. So now to ask them to be straight with you and show you what's going on and cut you in on that money, it's going to be hard once they're used to bringing that money in to give that money back.
Yeah, and I think it's everything in our country needs to be kind of rebalanced so that the money doesn't just stay with the top 0.5% of the people, that everybody kind of can survive, and
yeah, to me, it just hurts the people, like myself and the filmmakers that do this for a passion. Because at the end of the day, it's our blood, sweat, and tears we're putting out there. Our 19-hour days we're putting in on the weekends and stuff like that to make something that we hope. And we're not asking to be rich and to be, have a house in the hills or something like that. We just want to be able to see the money that we put out there back, and maybe enough money to be able to get the next film off the ground. We just want
to do it again.
Yeah. So, and when stuff like that happens and you make a movie, no matter what the budget is, no matter how low the budget is, you do, if you're not getting anything back and don't have a chance to see anything back, it's almost like it kind of kills the passion a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more beautiful than getting together with a group of people and artists and craftspeople and actors and creating an atmosphere where everybody can do their work, and it's a beautiful process. And once you've done it once, you can't wait to do it again, and but it's unfortunate that it takes money to do it.
As horrible as this strike is and whatnot, do you think that it's benefited indie horror in any way?
Oh, well, I mean, if you're working with non-SAG actors and you're not a Writers Guild writer, I don't see why you can't make movies. And maybe there will be a period of time where the streamers are kind of hungry for product. Obviously, there are more and more European international TV series kind of playing on Netflix now than there ever were. So I think there might be, and I'm not a big strike buster or anything like that, but if you're not in the guild and your actors are just friends, why not continue to make movies,
Yeah, and I totally understand that. I totally agree with that there's going to be opportunities now to do that. But then again, there's the flip side of that coin. They're going to have the SAG actors and the other people saying that you're almost like calling us scabs, because going in there and taking the jobs that should be theirs outright or whatever. But I mean, I don't know. It's a slippery slope as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Especially if you have some aspiration of eventually being a member of the guild, then you better kind of not do that.
Yeah.
I've not been in any guilds in my life, so I sort of see both sides. I wish I was, because I would have better health insurance and residuals and all of that, but I chose my path, and I'm it's too late to turn around now. But yeah, I mean, you want the Screen Actors Guild to kind of survive and the Writers Guild to survive. And so, yeah, maybe we're all kind of in a holding pattern. Doesn't mean you can't make your movie and have 2 or 3 films in the can when those strikes are resolved.
Right.
Sure.
What's next?
Oh, good.
What's next for Subspecies? Is there anything else coming up?
Well, I'm waiting to see if the the budget for Subspecies was a little higher than Charlie Band has been spending on his movies, and he wanted to do it. He knew he had to do it, and the opportunity arose to actually make it for a really incredibly low budget, but it's still like 3 or 4 times higher than his average movie. So if the movie makes its money back, then there's an argument to be made to do another one.
I got one more question for you before I let Otis ask you here.
Okay.
Charlie Band. I got to meet him. I mentioned this to you before, or whatever. So I got to meet him personally. He did a road show here in Florida, and I got to be kind of his valet. I drove him around, brought him to the road show, helped him out there. The road show was such a fun time. And then as I was taking him back, or the road show was finishing up, he came over to me and actually gave me the box set of Subspecies and autographed it for me, and just saying thank you, whatever. So he was such a good guy to me, and the stories and stuff like that, and meeting him like that was really refreshing. How is it? How is your working relationship with him, and how long have you known him?
I've known him since Tourist Trap, basically.
Oh, well, yeah.
So 30, 40 years, God knows. I mean, it's a long time. I love him. He's like a good friend of mine. We get drunk every once in a while together. And he's a real incredible producer to work with and for, because he basically, if you kind of know what he's looking for and the kind of the level of horror that he's comfortable with, or fantasy, he basically kind of gives you a lot of freedom to do your work, and then comes in post-production and gives you some notes that are good notes, and then he's got a ready built audience that he's promoting constantly. There'll be Bloodstones. People can buy Bloodstones probably this fall. And a new box set of the Subspecies films. And so, he knows what he's doing selling movies.
I think I need a Bloodstone.
Yeah, I'm going to get one too as soon as
I need one of them for my collection.
Yeah, man, they're going to be not cheap, but they're going to be cool. Yeah.
We have a lot of young filmmakers, young people, young guys, gals getting into making independent films that watch this particular show. What kind of advice can you throw their way when it comes to in this climate? What kind of what would be the number one tip, the number one advice that you would give? Because I'm sure that your advice would be taken received quite well, given
hey, I'm listening myself.
Exactly.
I think the most important thing is to not give up, because anybody that works in filmmaking, you're going to have incredible highs, and you're going to have incredible lows too. And, you have to just take it and learn from it and keep moving forward, because, after TerrorVision, I thought, I made a wonderful, funny, great movie. And when it hit the theaters, it was savaged by critics and didn't find its audience. Found a small audience of kind of hipster people that were kind of the intended audience anyway. And I suffered for like a year after that, just like really bummed out that something I put so much work into could be so just readily kind of dismissed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, but I kept writing, and I kept on and never gave up, and would edit a movie, save up my money, write and go broke, and write another and edit another movie to make some money. And over the years, TerrorVision kind of kids passed it along to their friends and had sleepovers and watched it together. And those kids grew up into guys like you, and basically now it's got an incredible kind of following of people that really love it, and it took, 30 years or more to do that. So it's, I think the main thing is you're doing it because you love doing it, and you have to just accept the good with the bad and not.
Sure.
I see on Facebook people are like always complaining that nobody loves them and blah blah blah, and everybody hates them, and then their project, and then they're going to just go kill themselves or something. And I, you just can't do that. That's not the way to make movies. You have to have a really tough skin and believe that what you're doing is worthwhile. And even if it doesn't make money and doesn't find an audience, you had a good time doing it, and you made your friends feel good as you were making it. It's all about telling stories and finding an audience that likes those stories.
Sure. And if you're not making a profit, maybe you went into it for the wrong reason. I mean, you kind of just have to let it seems like you just have to let it take its own life, it take on its own life. You put the passion into it. That story of TerrorVision, as you mentioned, I believe John Carpenter had the same issue with Halloween, an iconic horror film. That it did not get very good reviews.
Wow, yeah.
It was just looked down upon. Who's gonna watch this? A guy in a mask running around killing people, a staple of slasher movies now. I mean, that's actually great advice. It's very simple. You have to stay true to your passion. You have to, be in it for the right reason. If you stay, headstrong, it seems to me, if you're doing the right things and you stay headstrong, those little extras, that paycheck may get bigger. You may, be opened up to, opportunities down the road, but you have to stay strong and a thick skin. Absolutely.
And say yes to everything. Don't say no, and don't feel like you're above anything. Just say yes, because especially when you're young, every person that you meet could end up being part of your larger circle of people that are going to eventually do something good. You have to have a strong skin. You have to love what you're doing, and you have to learn. You have to learn from your mistakes too. And you have to remember that you're making movies, you're making them to find an audience, and you have to make sure that the story you're telling has some relevance to somebody.
Sure. And which actually goes right along with the question in the chat. Do you find that current events determine the way movies are received by an audience?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I mean, every movie is kind of like made from the zeitgeist of the time that it was made, and generally it's, "Hello, John, how you doing, man?" Texas Chainsaw.
There you go. There you go.
Every movie is made from the zeitgeist of the day of the time you made it. Doesn't get out to the audience until maybe a year later, and things might have changed completely. I think maybe one of the reasons TerrorVision didn't find an audience at its time was it was released the same week as the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So I think the idea of a comedy science fiction movie was not in the zeitgeist.
Right. Although that's what we actually needed. I remember being in school and having them wheel the TV in so we could all see it.
Wow,
we needed something to laugh at, but yeah, I mean, it's you have to, you're stabbing in the dark, really. The main thing is, I think with independent films and indie films, your creativity has no real, I mean, you can just let it go. You're not being told by what I call big Hollywood and studios, no, you can't say that, no, you can't do that, you can't. I've seen things that would cause the cancel culture to lose their mind in some indie films, but I like that, not for the antagonistic aspect of it, but I'm not I think it's great that you can take and just whatever's in your head, put it down and make it art.
Yeah, and I think
with no holds barred.
You should be pushing the boundaries too, especially in independent horror films. Just push the limits. Don't.
I mean, that's the basis of a horror movie anyway. Horror movies are known to push the limits. And, that's what I think a lot of us go to horror movies to see them push the limits.
I was going to say, we got to get ready to let you go here shortly, but I do want to ask you something else.
Okay.
Do you do very many film festivals? Conventions or anything like that? Do you get into that?
Oh, we love doing conventions. Honest and
Okay.
Denise and I love doing conventions. We don't get invited to so many. I don't know why.
Wow.
But we love it. Yeah, we love
Well,
meeting
just to
people
let
who
you
love our
know,
films, you know.
I have my Florida Horror Con that's going to be coming up here in 2024, and that's kind of why I wanted to ask you about that, because I would love to try and get you guys together and do a subspecies panel. There you go, Florida Horror Con.
Awesome, man. Yeah,
And
that would be
Denise
really good.
and Denise lives out here, so I mean, hey,
Yeah, yeah, we're there, man. Just invite us. We love to meet people. Love to, yeah, we love to see people that like our movies. You know.
well, we'd love to have you. So, anything you want to say to our fans here in closing? Anything that you want to drop on us?
No, man. Keep making movies. Keep making movies. Keep watching movies. Enjoy yourself. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, brother. It's been great chatting with you, and
Hey,
we'll
man,
talk
fun
again
for
soon.
me
Okay.
too. Okay,
All right.
take care, and
Take care, brother.
see you, Otis. Thanks, man. Okay, bye-bye.
Yes,
Bye-bye
sir.
now.
Have a good night. Wow, what a that was a great conversation. What a nice guy.
I could have talked to him all night.
Oh, all night. Yeah. Good stuff. Really good stuff. Now I feel that I'm gonna have to spend the rest of my my day off before I go back to my slave job and catch up on my subspecies. I
Yep,
keep
me
getting
as well.
interrupted every time I go to sit down and watch it. Like I said, I've seen 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the only ones that I have not.
Well, then don't jump right into 5 again. Make sure you go back and see 3 and 4 first.
I know. I was so excited to see 5. I just, and I'd seen, I believe, the first one years ago, and so I didn't. So I was trying to catch myself up. But what a great show! And you know what? Next week is not going to be any different. I'm pulling up. I'm over here at the Indie Horror Junkie.com, and next week we have Miss Jamie Hill. You guys may know her from Skinamarink, and a movie that I recently watched about a week and a half ago that I absolutely loved, and that is Grotesque.
Yes.
Another one she is in. I laughed. That was a very fun, enjoyable flick. We're gonna have Miss Jamie Hill on next week to talk again all things indie horror.
That's right. And next week, also on Wednesday, will be the release of issue 4 from the Indie Horror Junkie magazine.
There you go.
Yep, it'll be live on the website. It'll be live on the website on IndieHorrorJunkie.com. You can go there. You can download the first 3 issues out of there now, and issue 4 will go live on the 13th as well. I'll be in California with my granddaughter and my daughter, but I will still be here on the show with you from California.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
What do we got here? What is this?
Brian loved the advice and the inspiration.
Absolutely.
I think that's what a lot of young filmmakers need.
Absolutely.
Is inspiration, a good inspirational story. I guess kind of a rags to riches, if you will, but not so much riches, just really drudging through all of the hard work, the the bullshit that you're going to go through as a filmmaker, and especially, a first-time filmmaker. I think it's good sometimes to hear those stories that, hey, this happened. This was a horrible time. This didn't work out, but I kept going, and look where I'm at. And I think we all need to hear that.
And I think both he and you had good points. At the end of the day, if you're not doing this as your passion, I think your focus is wrong. If you're doing this because this is what you love, because the way I look at it is that films are going to outlive us. Long after I'm gone, my films will still be available on YouTube or wherever they end up getting distributed, and people, generations later or whatever, will still have access. I'm just hoping to create some magic that will last, that people will look back on and say, man, this was good, or did you see this, long after I'm out of here, because what other profession can you have that you can say that,
No, absolutely. I feel the same way. I've did a little voiceover for Elvira on a Run, a short, and I have the DVD in my hand, and my grandson, he can listen to that later, as he grows up. Look, that's my pop-up. It's little things like that. No matter how big the legacy is, just build one.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a blockbuster hit that you create. The fact that you created art, you did it.
Right.
It doesn't matter the audience. Sure, it to be received well. Who
Hmm.
doesn't? We want this podcast to be received well, and so I think that the same applies in any art form. Whether you're picking up a pen and crayons or whatever your art form is. I think passion has to drive you.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if passion drives you, and it is 100% passion that's driving you, you'll find a way to get to the other side of these hardships and these speed bumps. And yeah, I can't imagine, making films and hearing, the critics and just all the backlashing. Have you, while we have a couple minutes, have you ever had to deal with that? Just really harsh critics, with any of your films?
You're always going to have critics for anything that you do. I mean, no matter what it is, whether you think it's the absolute greatest thing that's in sliced bread or whatever it is, you're always going to have somebody that thinks it's just hot garbage. That's just the way it is. Whether they truly believe that, or whether they feel that that this is just going to be the kind of remark they want to make that's going to get attention from somebody else or get them across, whatever the case may be. The bottom line is, I think, like we talked about, you have to be doing this because this is your passion. If you're doing this just to make money, then you're in for a hard road. And when that money doesn't come, I can see, like Ted was saying, whatever it is, not giving up. I can see you giving up and finding something else to do or whatever. If you're doing this because this is your passion, this is what you love to do. That's why I call, like us at the independent filmmakers, the white collar people, because we're working our 9-to-5 jobs that we can't stand, but we're doing it because we need to, so we can get to the evening, so we can write, so we can film, so we can get together with our film friends. That's doing it for the passion. If you have it and you're doing it for the passion, that I think will help you get past those rough times, because at the end of the day, it's not the money you're doing it for. The money is going to create opportunity and give you chances to do more and stuff like that as well. But if you're doing it for the passion, you're going to do it whether there's money or not.
Yeah, and I'm living proof of that, because I've been doing my podcast, the Night of the Living Dread's been doing that for the past 5 years. I ain't made a dime, but I love being behind this mic, and I love talking about horror, and that keeps me going. There's times where I'm like, man, I don't even know if this is worth it. It's worth it, because guess what? I didn't give up, and I made it here to be able to talk indie horror every Wednesday at 8 p.m.
We love
Eastern.
having you.
And that's great. And it's a great time. You can't please them all when it comes to making a film. When it comes to any art form, you're not going to please them all. And speaking of art form, if you have a indie art form, as long as it's horror, it could be comic books. It could be, if you're an author, as long as it's horror, and you're an independent artist, get a hold of us. We might be able to have you on the show. You can email us right down there at the bottom, Indie Horror Junkie at Gmail. And get a hold of us. Hey, maybe you get a little write-up. If you got a film project, which we talk mostly about, get a hold of us, and we try to shine the spotlight on you. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. And the good thing about this is the show is live on Facebook, and it also goes live on our YouTube channel. But after this is done, you can always go back and watch these shows. You can watch this show that we just did and the ones previous to that. So that's the beautiful thing about it, is if you couldn't have made it to join us today, you can always go back and watch it and join us next week and say hello to Jamie.
Absolutely. As soon as I click end stream, it will be ready for your viewing pleasure.
Pleasure.
I'm glad this is the end of the show. As Kissa said, words are hard. And with that, some words that are not hard. And that is, we'll see you
next Wednesday.